Hi, everybody. I'm with Paul Whiteside today, and Paul is a technology leader. And we are going to be continuing with our podcasts and video on digital transformation. So, Paul, welcome to the show and to the series. Do you want to give us a quick intro to yourself?
Okay, yeah, so I'm Paul Whiteside. I've been in software for about 25 years, and over that time been involved in building products, running teams, and doing digital transformations for companies of all sizes, from small startups through to PE to large corporates.
Fantastic. So in good hands today. So what we're going to be talking about today, Paul, is kind of quite clear that digitalization is part of the norm today. It's part of our current climate. Obviously, it's gone through a massive acceleration given the COVID-19 pandemic. Needless to say, consumer behavior has changed, and along with that, there's a massive need for organizations to keep with the pace of that change, to keep with, to respond pretty fast to customer needs, to be a lot more personal when we're providing, information and messages to customers, and to be omni-channel, right? We also look at there's a need to not only change the content of what we're providing, but there's also a need for a change in the context of how we're doing business today. But having said all of that, there are still challenges, right? The challenges around how do we transform and what are the wider impacts on the business? How do we ensure that as we're going through digital transformation, we're maintaining the value and creating value, right? And then what are some of the enablers around that? So that's something I want to talk about today and touch on today. So with that said, Paul, I'm going to jump into the first question. Digital transformation, yes, we're going to presume we're going into it, but how do we overcome some of the challenges that we're facing around digital transformation today?
Yeah, great question. So there are a lot of challenges, and I think one of the big one is trying to apply paradigms from the last industrial revolution to the new one that we find ourselves in now. And the paradigm has changed from being efficient at doing one thing well to being adaptable and nimble. And to do that, you need the right people, teams, and technology and architecture. And there has to be a realization that your organization has become a digital organization and has to operate that way. So some of the big challenges are, first of all, realizing that happens, and that efficiently doing the wrong thing isn't digital.
Yeah.
Some other issues that come up are a perception that it's all encompassing and requires a huge upfront program that's going to last 3 years and you're done. So there's a lot of work often happens to push through big budgets for these things, when really a lot of digital transformation happens at the culture and the team level to drive out collaboration, and you can start with it now. There's some problems around viewing things as one and done. So we will transform ourselves and it will take 3 years and it will cost this much and then we'll be done. Transformation's a forever thing. There's a saying that in the digital world, any advantage you have is short-lived. So you need to set up teams, people, operating models to be able to change quickly. And I think that the last thing, and probably the hardest thing, is understanding how technology is affecting things. So it's easy to look at what has happened now with COVID. We've become very reliant on technology very, very quickly, and a lot of things have moved to e-commerce. And that's been a slow direction of travel for many years, but has been recently sped up a lot by what's happened this year. And it's caught companies that haven't matured themselves digitally by surprise. And there are some casualties beginning to be seen out there as well. So I think those are the big blockers to digital transformation. But really taking it all back to culture and having a culture of continuous change and becoming good at change can be one of the answers to that.
Yeah. No, no, I fully appreciate it. It can take a little bit of time, because if you think about what's happening today, some of the transformation actually require a bit of a business model transformation, right? And just in certain cases, a revenue model transformation, and that doesn't happen overnight, right? So,
Mhm.
um, and it's interesting. So I think, have you come across, some examples, for example, where there has been a bit of an impact on the business model and the revenue model? So, for example, as you're moving from, kind of like an asset sell, more of a physical sell to consumers, and moving that online, as you're going online, do you feel that sometimes there's a need to review the revenue model? Are you moving from a kind of a transaction to a little bit more of a subscription type fee model? And are businesses faced with, hold on, do I need to change my business model straight away, or can I do this, over a step change way, and continue selling the product through a digital channel, and then eventually move it along into probably a different revenue model? And I
Yeah.
appreciate that takes some time.
Well, I think what you've hit on there is the difference between digitization, which has been happening for a long time, and business model transformation, which is the true digital transformation, where you're taking technology opportunities and exploiting them so that you can explore new avenues that weren't available to your business 10 years ago.
Yeah.
To some extent, it also depends on the business that you're in. So retail has been very affected by this, and there's been a large swing to online. E-commerce in itself isn't really a new thing, and I would say that people who are just starting out with e-commerce now are pretty late to that party. Um, Other things like B2B, there are other ways to make money, and there are opportunities in B2B to change how you get revenue. So a lot of times what is important is to establish recurring revenue, to set up as a platform that brings people together from different sides, and you grow both sides, and there's some synergies that happen between the two sides as things grow. And that's a good example of business models that are changing. So you can look at things like Salesforce.com perhaps, and software as a service. And maybe 15 years ago, where operating in that way wouldn't have been something that could even have been imagined, is now a way to operate a platform. For other sectors like retail and what have you, I think there's some big challenges to rethink basically everything about how things are done. And often what's important there is to become flexible and to distribute risk. And you can do that by using APIs to make your company a part of a network behind the scenes, but still a B2C facing company.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things, and there's quite a lot of moving parts to it. So there's quite a lot of things to think through and consider. And as with all things, there's always an element of risk. But e-commerce isn't new, and software as a service isn't new. There are some new things coming, which probably would be riskier, but we'll see who wins from those in the
Mhm.
next 10
Yeah.
years. So, yeah.
And that's true. And I think one comment I may add is, I think whilst e-commerce is not necessarily new, what they are experiencing right now is a little bit more stressed supply chains, right? Because uh, I think now there's going to be an accelerated need for organizations to better manage some of their supply chains, or have the right connections between their e-commerce channels and some of the supply chain back office processes will become increasingly important, I think. And having a little bit more of a smoother connection between, those the channel and the back office is probably going to be uh,
Hmm.
required, I think.
But one thing that you can see happening is that, especially in things like supply chain, is that in the past a business would have wanted to own all aspects of that. In a modern digital world, that all becomes distributed, and companies are springing up that do very specific things. So, there's a company called Ping, and all they do is identity. That's all they do. And there are several companies like this, and what you can do is assemble your technology platform based on these services and APIs to other high quality services. And that can help a lot with things like moving a lot of things to OPEX, whereas beforehand they would have been big CAPEX projects to put in place, and getting away from the need to own everything in a big monolith. So if you were to get into talking about architectures that support that, there's been the move towards APIs, microservices, etc., that help to enable that kind of flexibility and breaking apart of the business, which presents some opportunities to rely on other companies who do specific things very, very well. So that's a direction of travel in enterprise architecture, and it's something to watch carefully. It's happening a lot now.
Absolutely, fully agree. And I'm all about, having the right partnerships and collaboration, because you definitely can't do this on your own, and kind of ensuring that you have the right alliances and ecosystems in place. So definitely agree that this can't be done by yourselves. Paul, what about moving the topic a little bit onto value creation? I know that's something that's quite close to your heart, and ensuring businesses are constantly creating value and then maintaining value as they're going through their digital transformation. Do you want to explain a little bit how companies can actually continue to be competitive and maintain their competitive advantage through the transformation?
Yeah, I think some of the competitive advantages that companies have had in the past have waned, and they've been challenged by digital. And one of the things to overcome with value creation is the inertia. And perhaps it's the inertia of overthinking it. So good value creation really just starts with a benchmark of where you're at now across people, products, platforms, technology, ways of working, and defining a way forward that addresses each of those things, that works you towards a target state. And at each point, you can measure various things that show that you are progressing towards a point of enhanced value. So there are some big strategic problems that need to be solved in value creation, but there are also lots of current day-to-day problems, and often by solving the current day-to-day problems, you are actually working towards solving the bigger problems down the track and building up that solid foundation that you need. Ultimately, though, we're going to try and work towards establishing a competitive advantage of some sort, whether that lasts for 12 to 18 months or 3 years or more. And you have to keep rolling. And I think one of the key attributes of a digital company is that competitive advantage is quite malleable as time goes on, and you do need to have the organization that will support the nimbleness required. So all of these things would be reflected in a value creation plan, which is again a living roadmap which tests assumptions. You might get down the track and realize it has to be tuned and changed. But this does help to overcome some of the inertia that we spoke about earlier, where everything needs to be thought through up front. I think a good value creation plan is literally that succession of quick wins that you need over time to give you some, first of all, important cash flow, but later on some access to new customers, etc. Or partnerships and that kind of thing. So yeah.
I suppose keeping the customer experience in mind at all times helps with probably resolving some of those day-to-day problems. And I think that's probably a good starting point to always make sure, how do we tie value creation, but also how is it closely linked to the customer experience along the journey.
I think that's very important. It's going to start with the customer and work back, and it could be about what the customer values most. Do they value having a variety of products, or do they value having good recommendations that are just for them, or do they value speed of delivery and returns? All of those kind of things, and it depends on who your customers actually are. But working back from there, you get to the core data platforms, you understand what needs to be built to enable the company to be able to provide those things for its customers. And then you're back into architecture, digital enablement planning, etc., where you're building out a company that can do those things that your customers need and want. So.
Great, great. And that's a good segue into the third question, Paul. What about technology? You know, what's enabling some of the technology transformations today, or digital transformations? Interested in a bit of the fourth industrial revolution technologies. What springs to mind?
Well, there's the good old World Wide Web, which never went away and is going to be with us for a long time. And that itself is created of lots of other technologies. So I think that there are now standard technologies that probably wouldn't fall into innovation. They're stable. They're what you do. People are playing around a lot and getting some good benefits from things like chatbots and artificial intelligence. For instance, there was a study, an implementation, done by the AA Ireland, where they put in chatbots to try and shorten the queue time for people. What they were able to do was detect even who was an awkward customer, who was an angry customer, and route those people through to an actual call center operator to be dealt with. And all the other easy stuff was channeled through to artificial intelligence agents, which were able to guide people very, very quickly through their renewals. So what that did for them was it saved them a lot of money actually in processing the renewals. There was the efficiencies that it got, but it also meant it a lot easier. It was a lot easier for customers to get through to an operator when they needed to and get a resolution quickly. So they had some good success from that. They lowered customer churn rate and a lot of things like that, which was very important to them. So that was a good success, and you see a lot of RPA, robotic stuff happening, and I think that's a way to go. I think there's a lot to be examined there with robotic process automation in the future. People are also using things like data analysis to create effect. So we've been analyzing data for many years in big old data warehouses, but now we're able to analyze big data, fast data, semi-structured data. We're able to understand unstructured data using NLP. We're able to identify trends. And one of the big things that's happening is that a lot of these insights are now being used for predictive purposes to predict sales, but they're also being used for what is called prescriptive purposes, i.e. they inform strategy. So a lot of companies have their finger on the pulse with customers. They have tons of data at their disposal, or they're partnering up with companies who can give them that data. And there's big benefits in data. And then there are things like blockchain and what have you that people are using in things like legal area, trading, of course. And again, these things apply in different ways to different businesses. I think the last big enabling thing is the cloud, which has been with us for probably 12, 15 years now, AWS. But the amount of services in the cloud has become immense, and you actually need to build less and less. Systems engineering has become more systems assembly, and you can commit to it for a while, turn off things that don't work. It allows you to be innovative. So the cloud is another big enabler going forward. So.
Oh, that's great. No, that's great. And I suppose a lot of this is underpinned by data. And I know we quite often talk about big data, but I think there's a lot of complexity in there. Having like a first-party data model and just understanding your customers is quite hard. I don't think a lot of organizations have actually got a grasp of the data that they have within their systems and how best to leverage it. I know that there are challenges around that, and sometimes automating and going through the RPA process you can extract a little bit more value as a quick win by automating something rather than looking at data and machine learning. Whilst they're really important, I think we're not 100% there yet, right? With big data, because there's a lot of complexity around some of that part. Is that a fair statement?
It is fair. It is very complex, and getting your data right is fundamental, or you can get a misread, and you can send the business off doing something it probably shouldn't be doing. Using things like RPA is good for cleaning data, and it's good for things like what used to be manual data entry. You can get that done a lot more quickly. You can get a lot better quality using those kinds of technologies. The other thing is every company has data, but not all companies have big data. Big data is quite a specific thing. So you can partner up with people who will manage volumes of data for you, and you can extract what you need out of that. So getting big data to small data is important. But the key thing with is that you, as I call it, you follow the money. It's detective work all the time. And when you build a big data warehouse, it's going to do 3 or 4 things very well and give you a lot of reporting and insights where you can start from. But if you identify something that needs investigation, this is where you have teams of data scientists or data analysts that will be able to go in and use modern tooling and go and dig in. And in fact, the business, if the data is prepared properly, the business can often do it themselves using things like Tableau and what have you. Although sometimes you need to dig a little bit deeper and you might need a small project to get that done. But a good data team can work fast like that, can follow a lead and figure out what's going on out there quite quickly without having to build huge infrastructure up front. So
I know another watch point around the data is also the the privacy laws and the regulation around that, and first party data versus third party. Interesting, I think an interesting point to watch for, and as we're moving along the line, to what extent can we manage personal data? And I think what's important is just demonstrating, is there a good value exchange between consumers and organization when it comes to data, right?
I think so. And again, as you mentioned, personal data is something that all organizations need to be extremely careful with using and where it goes to and how it is handled. And we have very rigorous laws around how that is done. But again, this can lead to specialized companies that would be able to do that for you. You may not need to do it inside your company. You could partner with a company who's just going to handle that data and give you the insights that you need, or give you the data sets that you need, where you can then take it from there and pipe that data into applications. Or it might give you things like metrics that are going to dictate what a user sees when they land on your homepage, that level of personalization and things. So you can probably do that without needing to know all the details about a user. You just need an ID that you can match and some attributes that may have been created elsewhere. So I see that there will be a lot more of that specialization going on. And there are a lot of data analytics companies popping up all around London doing just that. They're mixing retail data with web data, with advertising data, with demographic data, and creating these high quality data sets that have more high level, more meaningful sets of attributes in them that can be consumed by business.
Yeah, it's all part of being providing more personalized offerings, I suppose. Paul, thank you very much for your time today. We've covered the three questions. I know we're going to dive deeper into other topics in some future sessions, but I wanted to thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to having you on the show next time.
That's great. Well, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Take care.